Good evening. It is my happy privilege to welcome you to the distinguished faculty lecture this evening with our distinguished faculty lecturer, Professor Rod Strobel. There we go. As I began my own college career, a wise mentor friend of mine said to me, "Spend the first 2 weeks studying your teachers." Well, there's something to that, you know. It's not that I could quite bring myself to ignore the material in all of my classes for the first 2 weeks, but studying your teachers has some value in and of itself. Our distinguished faculty lecture each year gives us a wonderful opportunity as a university community to gather, to learn at the hands of one of our colleagues about something that they are passionate about, that they care about, that matters to them, that they think should matter to us. We have an opportunity to share in that, and also we have the ancillary benefit of hearing more and learning more about one of our treasured colleagues. In just a few moments, John Friedman, who is the president of the North Pacific Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists and is the chair of the Board of Trustees of Walla Walla University, will give our opening prayer. And as he and I walk back to our seats, you will see that I will pause at Rod Strobel's chair, and I will pull an envelope out of my pocket, and I will give it to him. And in this envelope is a token of our appreciation for him. And the fact that I give it to him in advance of the lecture is an indication of my faith in the value of what we are going to experience here this evening. I welcome you to the Distinguished Faculty Lecture 2023.
We dispel it. In fact, let's stand together and let's have a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we just pause a moment to recognize, Father, that you are our God and that we are your children. And as our Heavenly Father, your love for us is more than we could ever imagine. We praise you for your grace and for your sovereignty. And we thank you, Father, that we are the apple of your eye, that you love it when we come to you and we bring you our requests. And so here we are again, Lord, tonight, asking, Father, for you to pour out your Holy Spirit once more and give us ears to hear all the wonderful things that's going to be shared with us tonight. Bless our speaker. Just give him an anointing, Lord, that he hasn't experienced before, we pray. And Lord, again, thank you for this family on this wonderful campus. Bless us as we worship you together tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
Rod Strobel is a Northwest native, having been born in Walla Walla and growing up in Washington in Montana. He is the youngest sibling with 2 sisters and 1 brother. His commitment to learning includes earning a bachelor's degree in physical education from Walla Walla University and 2 master's degrees, a Master of Education in Curriculum and Instruction from Walla Walla University, and most recently a Master of Arts in Motor Learning and Control from Columbia University. His thesis title, Research, Whole versus Progressive Part Practice Methods of Learning a Novel Variation of a Well-Learned Skill. More simply put, it involves students learning to ride a reverse steering bicycle, which required some non-intuitive changes in neuronal processing. As an educator for 37 years, Rod served as a faculty member, coach, and athletic director at the secondary level at Orangewood Adventist Academy and Walla Walla Valley Academy, and as a staff and faculty member at Walla Walla University since 2007. He has coached over 40 seasons across a variety of sports. Rod is currently an assistant professor and chair of the Department of Health and Physical Education. Students describe him as awesome, well-respected, as an excellent teacher, and an even better human being. Rod's professional contributions include decades of participation in the Seventh-day Adventist Health, Physical Education, and Recreation Association, serving as president and encouraging student involvement in the association. He has also presented work at the Western Society of Kinesiology and Wellness and was a contributing editor on the 8th edition of the Flag Football Rulebook. His community contributions include multiple years as bicycle course manager for the Ironman Triathlon, supporting the tour of Walla Walla bicycle race, a Sabbath school teacher, a church deacon, and serving on multiple university committees. Rod is a gracious gentleman with an unwavering commitment to well-being. He frequently advocates for programs and resources to support a holistic approach to wellness. On an individual basis, he works with students to support their success and has on several occasions helped students whose skill level in a given activity class was so underdeveloped that it was difficult for them to initially participate with the rest of the class. He is a person whose words have meaning and whose actions make a difference. Two of the most influential people in Rod's life are his dad, who has had unwavering strength and courage, and his wife, Kim, of 37 years, whose positive influence has changed him in many ways. He enjoys cycling, woodworking, travel, giant Scrabble, and entertaining University Senate colleagues by bringing various sport equipment artifacts to meetings. I am proud to have had the opportunity to serve the mission of Walla Walla University with Rod as a colleague and to have him as my friend. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Rod Strobel.
Some thanks first. The Faculty Development Committee for thinking this was a good idea. We'll see. Scott for those gracious words. He can make stuff up because they can't fire him anymore. And all the people that helped me get to where I am today. Everyone in my career has played a part of that, students as well as colleagues. My career in physical education, sport, and coaching can be traced back to two events. The first is really a collection of events from my childhood that can generally be summarized as my older brother and I playing, fighting, tormenting our sisters, and running from real and imagined enemies. Those experiences primed my body and mind for a career centered around the physical. I can't count how many times my brother committed some egregious act of violence against his occasionally innocent little brother. That would result in me chasing him unsuccessfully for what seemed like hours. As I would tire, I swear he would slow down to stoke my dream of ultimately catching him and exacting retribution. The second was watching Carmen Palmer run the 200 meters in high school. It was my first experience seeing movement as art, and it has kept me trying to create art through movement ever since. Most people, when I talk about sport as art, just smile and nod and probably think I've had too many blows to the head. But if you ever get the chance, stand on the inside corner of a track 25 meters down the home stretch and watch 8 good sprinters run the 200 meters. It's art in pure, thundering athletic motion. But to start at the beginning, we must go even further back. God created mankind in his own image. He placed them in the garden and told them to name the animals. He told them to be fruitful and multiply, and to work and take care of the place. He met with them frequently to talk, to see how things were going, and to build a relationship. I would imagine their conversations were about more than the weather. My hunch is that Adam and Eve had a lot of questions. Questions about God, questions about themselves, questions about the garden and their place in it. They had a lot to learn, and they got to talk to the one who had all the answers, the very first coach. The stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, although in a different context after the fall, continued with the theme of coaching. Go to the land I will show you. Do this thing that you don't fully understand. Believe me when I make you this promise. It's all the language of coaching. Fast forward to the wild roller coaster ride that was the life of David. David listening to the voice of God and doing the right thing, and then going way off the playbook and making up his own game plan. Repeated successes and repeated failures, but his coach never gave up on him. Then there is the ministry of Jesus, God with us, an in-person example of how to interact in this world. Jesus is a player coach whose knowledge and telling come from experience. He played this game and he won it, the best example ever of the oldest profession in the world. Now, according to oldest.org, the oldest profession in the world is toolmaker, followed by hunter, tailor, storyteller, artist, musician, farmer, and builder. But like so many other sources of information on the internet, they are wrong. Since creation, the oldest profession in the world has been coaching, and the first coach was God. You could make an argument that the oldest profession is teaching, but teaching is part of coaching. And since I'm the one standing up here, I'm going to say it's coaching, and you can't stop me. To establish my bona fides to talk about coaching, let me give you a brief overview of my coaching experience. My coaching career has included both boys and girls at the high school level and men and women at the collegiate level. I have coached a variety of sports, including basketball, fast-pitch softball, volleyball, flag football, and golf. Coaches engaged with teams for seasons, and I have coached for a total of 41 seasons, 10 seasons as an assistant coach and 31 seasons as a head coach. The sport I have coached the most is basketball, 20 seasons. I have coached a basketball team that had 4 sets of brothers. I have coached a basketball team that lost 50-104. I have coached a basketball team that won 97-17. I have coached a team with a 1-win season, but I have never coached a team with a winless season. I have coached a few teams that lost only 1 game in a season, but I have never coached a team with a perfect season. If you asked me for my high school all-time starting 5 basketball team, I would have to name 7 or 8 players. I do know that Calvin Anakaya would be on that list because he would run through a brick wall if I asked him to, and he wouldn't just try. He would find a way to do it. It would also take 7 or 8 players to name my college all-time starting 5. But I know that Matt Worley would be on that list because he was a kind and gentle assassin that always seemed to have another gear when he needed it. The 1-win season and a couple of the 1-loss seasons stand out in my mind. And I'm still so proud of Brendan Collins, Jarrett Johnson, Cole Henderson, Kevin Cummings, and Aubrey Fothery, who finished 3rd at the 2018 Cascade Conference Golf Championship. But I have no idea what my win-loss record is. From the standpoint of fortune and fame, I have had a remarkably unremarkable coaching career. Although I have not won fortune and fame, I have practiced coaching, thought about coaching, and taught a lot of future coaches for quite a few years. In that process, I've learned that X's and O's are an important, but a small part of coaching, so there won't be much of that tonight. The first day in my Principles of Coaching class starts with 2 statements. Statement number 1, if you don't care deeply about the welfare and well-being of your athletes, you have no business being a coach, and you'll end up doing more harm than good. Statement number 2, always remember that your athletes are idiots. Now, I mean that in the best possible way. But the reality is they don't know what they don't know. It's not their fault, and don't forget statement number one. But it's the job of a coach to help people get from where they are to where they want to go. The May-June 1996 issue of the Utne Reader had an interesting theme. Are you grown up yet? Do you know anyone who is? One of the articles really struck a chord in me and has informed me ever since. The article talked about the responsibility that adults have to help the next generations grow up, reaching back across the line and helping others into the adult world. I realized that in order for me to do that for my students and athletes, I needed to actually be the adult in the room. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's something I aspire to. In the process of sorting all this out for the last 36 years, several themes have emerged that I would like to talk about tonight. Although they may seem unrelated to coaching at first glance, I believe they are at the heart of helping students, athletes, or anyone grow and become better versions of themselves. Theme number one, the centrality of being human is our physical existence. Theme number two, empathy is the necessary skill for human thriving. Theme number three, our job is to love people the way we find them. So let's begin with theme number one. We are made in God's image, and although we currently see through a glass darkly and don't understand what being made in God's image fully means, it seems clear that our bodies and our physical manifestation are not a secondary characteristic of our reality. Our bodies are foundational to our human existence and experience. Jesus knew this. During his ministry, he took care of physical needs first, repairing physical deformity, restoring sight, healing disease, feeding the hungry. What he wanted was a relationship, but what he started with was caring for physical needs, because he knew that a relationship wasn't possible when people were too broken, hurting, hungry, or distressed to engage. We are promised that our bodies will be made perfect and the earth made new. That should tell us something about the importance of our physical bodies here and now. Paul teaches us that our bodies are the temple of God. Just like the temple in Jerusalem was the place that God met with the Israelites, so our bodies are the place God meets with us. Our bodies as the place where we meet with God is not a metaphor. We literally cannot experience God without our physical bodies. We take in the world around us through our senses of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. If you talk to neuroscientists, they will debate about another 15 or so senses, but generally agree on the addition of thermoception, nociception, equilibrium, and proprioception. Eco-psychologist Michael J. Cohen would argue that humans have 53 senses, but that's a discussion and rabbit hole for another time. The point remains that we experience our humanity through physical processes. I would venture to guess that you have been having thoughts and formulating opinions about what I'm saying, even as you sit quietly in your seats. Even those seemingly sedentary activities require physical processes. Thoughts require neurological activity. Neurological activity requires action potentials. Action potentials require sodium and potassium ions to move through the channels and gates of a semi-permeable membrane. Those are physical processes, and they are physical processes that are influenced by the health and wellness of the body they happen in. Often, I have offered $20 to anyone who could name a physical process, a human experience that does not require a physical process. I haven't lost any money yet, but here it is if you'd like to try. There is an idea that since we no longer interact with God face to face, that somehow the life of the body is secondary to the life of the mind. The Bible tells us differently, and modern science has provided data to back it up. A Google Scholar search for peer-reviewed articles about the gut-brain connection brings up about 270,000 results. I will summarize them for you. If you want your brain to feel good, you better take good care of your stomach. It's clear that the mind and the body are one, much like God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit are one. We are made in the image of God, and a dynamic, vibrant physical existence is part of God's original plan for humanity. Health, well-being, and vitality influence coaches and athletes in many predictable ways, and in some ways that are less obvious. Some of the obvious and well-understood ways have to do with mobility, speed, power, strength, and conditioning, because they have a direct influence on the fundamental movement skills of running, jumping, coordination, throwing, catching, kicking, and striking. Overt physical skills are important, and the principles of deliberate practice to acquire them are well understood, if not always easily applied. Mental skills and abilities are also important and can be the difference between good and great, particularly at elite levels of performance, athletic and otherwise. In the basketball world, it is abundantly clear that physical health, vitality, and function are precursors to any kind of success. A twisted ankle, a sprained wrist, a pulled muscle, low energy levels, presence and engagement, all these have a direct impact on the ability to perform. Many, many years ago, I had a kid show up for practice that was clearly not ready to go. Normally one of my best players and a leader on the team, I finally threw him out of practice because he wasn't focused, was constantly goofing around, and was a major distraction to what we were trying to accomplish. A year later, one of his teammates told me that he had been drunk that day. I was furious. How could he be so irresponsible, jeopardize his health, set a terrible example for the team, and disrupt my practice? We're good friends to this day, and I asked him about it several years later. He told me that it was because he was young and stupid and making bad decisions while dealing with difficult life circumstances. It taught me that if I am more tuned into the people around me, maybe I can be a source of help instead of just being irritated at stupid people that aren't doing what they're supposed to. More on that later. The bottom line was that he could not engage productively because he was physically impaired. I'm happy to report that he went on to become a fully functioning and productive member of society, and most importantly, seeks to live his life in a relationship with God. I contend that taking good care of our bodies is our first responsibility if we claim to want a relationship with God, because we cannot experience God without our physical bodies. At a Seventh-day Adventist institution of higher learning, physical education in its largest sense should be our first priority. If it's not, we are shortchanging our students and handicapping their ability to maximize their learning opportunities. It is unlikely they will see a compelling picture of God or want to develop a relationship with Him if they are too anxious and depressed to get out of bed or leave their room. Our school seal contains a physical, mental, and spiritual triangle, and it is my belief that the physical side of that triangle is the most important, because the other sides of the triangle are impossible without it. I do need to include a small sidebar here. You've heard me use the term physical education a few times now. That is the correct term for my profession. Abbreviating my profession to 2 letters devalues and minimizes what professional physical educators do. There is a common phrase for the slackers in my profession. Yes, we have them just like every other profession. They are called roll-out-the-ball teachers, because that's pretty much all they do. They roll out the ball and ignore learning, development, and relationships. They don't deserve to be called physical educators because they are not. I do realize that it requires 5 more syllables to say physical education. But if you are so exhausted you can't manage 5 more syllables, maybe you need to go on an exercise program to develop a bit more stamina. And if you are just too lazy to say 5 more syllables, Suck it up, Buttercup. Greg Dodds doesn't teach H. Cynthia Westerbeck doesn't teach E. And I don't teach those two letters that will remain nameless. Rant over. Professor Napier would be proud. The centrality of being human is our physical existence. The reality that you can't hear this or even think about what I'm saying without physical processes makes the point. You don't have to agree with it, just like you are free to think the earth is flat. But there is no human experience that is not physical. Theme number 2. In 1991, the anthropologist Donald E. Brown published a list of human universals. He claims that these features show up in every culture on Earth with no exceptions. The list is quite extensive, but it contains a number of characteristics that are informative for our discussion. According to Brown, empathy is universal. Also, all cultures cry, make jokes, dance, have a concept of fairness, understand reciprocity, and all cultures tell stories. Interestingly, all cultures also create music with a melody, have a sense of aesthetics, and create decorative art. In Western higher education, we know these as part of the humanities, and we will return to that idea later. Did you notice that the universal features of human culture just mentioned that did not include the word empathy seem related to empathy in some way? Crying, making jokes, understanding fairness and reciprocity, telling stories. They all suggest the capacity and ability to understand what someone else is or could be feeling. We all know what it's like to cry with or for someone else. Telling a joke requires us to set up the listener by leading them down a predictable path of understanding and experience, and then the punchline, flipping the script to something unexpected. For example, it's clear that a shark can swim much, much faster than I can. It's also very clear that I can run way, way faster than a shark. So in a triathlon, it all comes down to who's faster on the bike. See what I did there? Our sense of fairness and reciprocity extends beyond ourselves in obvious ways when we become indignant on behalf of another person or group of people that are mistreated. Unfortunately, like many good things, fairness and reciprocity can be twisted in harmful and damaging ways, as we see in the nationalism, tribalism, and sectarianism that dominate culture today and often masquerade as protecting Christian values. It is a distorted and corrupted application of fairness that drives people to favor groups and individuals that look like, talk like, act like, and think like them. Sin has twisted even those things that are good into instruments of discrimination, division, and exclusion. Facts and figures are not nearly as compelling as stories. Telling stories in person and face-to-face engages us to connect with each other in very powerful ways. Face-to-face interactions trigger mirrored brain activity that disappears when participants simply turn their backs on each other. Our brains seem to use empathy to enhance our ability to understand and get along with each other in ways that are greatly diminished when we are apart. But what about dancing? Well, when the music starts, children can't stop themselves from dancing. Watching children dance is a lesson in pure joy and discovery. Dancing seems to be contagious and spread empathetically through the visual system. Unless you are alone or at camp meeting in the grown-up tent, one person rarely dances alone for long. It reminds me of a quote by Eduardo Galeano. The church says the body is a sin. Science says the body is a machine. Advertising says the body is a business. The body says, I am a fiesta. Before we learn what the church, science, and advertising have to say about it, we know this deep in our bones. Just like there are different kinds of happiness and sadness, there are different kinds of empathy. Psychologists often talk about cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and compassionate empathy as part of a kind of empathy spectrum. Cognitive empathy has to do with thoughts, reasoning, and understanding what another person might be thinking or feeling, a kind of understanding without attachment. We can think of this as empathy of the mind. Emotional empathy is associated with feelings and somatic sensations when the feelings of another become our own. We can think of this as empathy of the heart. Compassionate empathy balances both cognitive and emotional empathy in ways that inspire caring action and behavior that is helpful to another. Empathy is a skill that can be developed through practice, so don't worry if you're bad at it. You can get better if you want to. Empathy has become the valuable skill of the future, according to Jeff Colvin in his book, Humans Are Underrated. As machines and AI continue to replace instead of just enhance workers, the unique abilities of humans are becoming more and more valuable, particularly empathy. Colvin writes that experts can predict to a high degree of accuracy which doctors will be sued for malpractice just by watching a few minutes of their interactions with a patient. They don't even need to hear what is being said. Just watching the interaction is enough. Doctors with high empathy skills get sued less and have better health outcomes with their patients than doctors with lower empathy skills. You can imagine that doctors with high empathy skills will be more valuable, and not just for hospitals and insurance companies, than doctors who come across as arrogant, impersonal, and unfeeling. Knowledge and skills are essential, but they are not enough to achieve the best possible outcomes. And this is where the humanities come back into our story. Medical schools look for students that have studied the humanities and engaged with the world in meaningful ways. The study of art, music, history, and literature develop empathy because they give us a glimpse into the experiences, places, times, and cultures that are not our own. It's why, after health and physical education, of course, the humanities are critical for developing students who are well-rounded and truly educated. Critical for developing students that are thinkers and not mere reflectors of other men's thoughts. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not advocating for everyone to become a humanities major. I'm just saying that we neglect serious inclusion and study of the humanities in all our majors at the peril of our students' futures. We should be including, and students should be demanding, more health and physical education and more humanities in the curriculum. It's interesting to note that research shows the ability to sense the thoughts and emotions of others is negatively influenced by screen time. This includes phones, tablets, computers, and televisions. Who would have thought that interacting with actual people makes us better at interacting with actual people? As you will no doubt have suspected, I have learned some lessons about empathy from coaching over the years. There was this one player, probably the best defensive player I ever coached. Lightning quick reflexes and cat-like agility. There was never a loose ball that he did not come away with. And that is not an exaggeration. I'm pretty sure he came up with loose balls in games he wasn't even playing in. He was tough, tenacious, and hardworking, but could not or would not do what I wanted him to do. We liked to run and press and score lots of points. Rule 5, Section 2 of the NCAA basketball rulebook states that the winning team is the team that has accumulated the greater number of points when the game ends. So we didn't care much how many points the other team scored as long as we scored more than they did. This meant that we wanted to play fast all the time because we planned on being better at playing fast than the other team, and eventually they would break down. It worked a lot of the time. So we ran and we pressed, and it made sense to me to put my best defender at the top of the press. But he was terrible up there. I mean, couldn't find his butt with both hands terrible. Well, I'm pretty stubborn, So I just kept stopping play and coaching him. You need to be here instead of there. Force the ball this way instead of that way. This went on for days. Me telling him what to do and him not doing it. Unbelievable. I was completely frustrated. And finally, as a last resort, I finally tried listening. After a couple of conversations with him about what was going on, I discovered he was having trouble trusting what was going on behind him in the press. If he couldn't see what was happening, he wasn't sure what to do or where to commit, and it led to indecision and being late on rotations. My years of coaching wisdom told me to put my best defensive player nearest to the ball. But my years of coaching wisdom, combined with an empathetic understanding of what was going on in the mind of my player, told me that he was a middle linebacker and not a defensive end. Instead of go get the guy with the ball, he needed to read the movements and actions of the offense and defense, and then his intuition would put him in the right place at the right time. When I moved him to the middle of the press, he flourished and created terror and chaos for other teams. Brilliant move, right? Another time I had a player that disagreed very strongly with a decision I made early in the season. So much so that he quit the team and delivered a scathing letter that outlined all the ways in which I was a low-down, dirty, rotten scoundrel, or words to that effect. Not very long after that, he was in the hospital with a pretty bad health scare. I knew I should visit him, and when I did, the room was full of his friends and family that I'm pretty sure had all been previously informed of the flaws in my character. I didn't stay long, and I don't remember what I said. But I was glad I visited because I wanted him to know that I cared. As I began to learn about some of the circumstances and challenges he had been facing, it gave me a better understanding of his point of view. The next year, another member of the team told me that this kid wanted to play on the team again. I told them to have him come talk to me. I don't remember my exact words, but it was something like, "I would love to have you rejoin the team. I know you will be a valuable contributor, and I'm glad to have you back." He got a big smile, and our team gained a valuable teammate that fit in very well with what we were trying to accomplish. My willingness to try and see things from his perspective allowed me to give him an opportunity to rejoin his basketball family, and it led to my favorite 4 minutes of basketball ever. The next year, we were playing in the Seattle area, and midway through the second half of a close game, I called play number 4. This particular play had the 2 guards circling around the 4 on the low block, the 5 setting a cross screen for the 4 to pop up to the left elbow for a turnaround jumper. The play had 4 or 5 scoring options, but the 4 from the elbow was the best one. That's why I named it number 4. Well, it worked, as luck would have it, 4 times in a row. In frustration, the opposing coach called the timeout to try and change the momentum. I let the team sit for a while and then wandered over to the bench towards the end of the timeout with my guys asking, what play should we run next? Now, a smart coach would call a few other plays to let them forget what their coach had just told them about stopping play number 4, and then spring it on them again later. I've done it dozens of times, and it's usually a very effective strategy. But instead of doing the smart thing, I said, let's run number 4 again. Everyone in the gym knew they called the timeout to learn how to stop play number 4. But to quote Inigo Montoya, I knew something they did not know. I knew I had smart players, and I knew how brilliantly the play had been designed by me. So I told my point guard to call number 4, that they would be doubling down off the 3, and that 4 could either score on the double team or kick it out to the 3, who would slide to the 3 feet to the left and be standing there all by himself. Well, they doubled down off the 3. My 4 chose the second option, and our 3 drained 3 threes in a row. You can probably guess who our 3 was. The same kid who got a second chance because of a little empathy. The look of defeat on the opposing team's faces was matched fairly well, I think, by the smug look of satisfaction on mine. At that point, I could have subbed in 5 random people from the crowd and we still would have won the game. They were completely deflated, and I knew that one play run brilliantly by my players 7 times in a row had won the game. That was art. In athletics, empathy enables better understanding and performance through strengthened relationships. But it doesn't just work in athletics. I have worked on and led teams of people that I could not treat like my basketball players. Although sometimes I wished I could make them run sidelines for 20 minutes, I've learned that a little empathy makes me a better coworker, employee, and boss. An empathetic approach allows those around me to flourish, which makes my life easier and likely makes me more tolerable as well. Theme number 3. I wanted to say love is a many splendored thing, but only people over 55 would know what I'm talking about. And my wife convinced me not to use that, so scratch that. Love is an interesting thing. To be clear, I'm talking about agape and not eros. I'm not going anywhere near romantic love in this talk, so you can rest easy about that. 1 Corinthians 13 names a bunch of skills and abilities that would be pretty amazing for people to have, but then says they are worthless without love. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it is recorded that the Pharisees and teachers of the law, read, the keepers and protectors of the established doctrines and orthodoxy of the time, asked Jesus what was the most important commandment. His answer caught them off guard. These were not stupid people. They would likely have known better than to ask a question they didn't already know the answer to, or at least they thought they knew what his answer might be and were planning to use it to trap him. But here was his answer from Matthew. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. That's a powerful 1-2 punch. But what about the little add-on at the end? All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. Jesus' listeners would have understood this to mean the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and all the prophecies of God in the rest of the Old Testament. Jesus was saying that all the stuff that came before, that they had built a culture, religion, and church around, was intended to point us toward loving God and loving others. And Jesus didn't qualify who the others were. Neighbors seems to imply anyone that we interact with. That means the people living next door and across town. That means all of our classmates. That means all of our coworkers. That means all of the students that walk through our doors and sit in our classrooms. No exceptions for race, culture, ethnicity, orientation, political party, major, or sports team affiliation. Yes, that even means Astros fans. Jesus didn't qualify or allow exceptions for who our neighbor is. So when we choose to make those distinctions, we are saying that we know better than Jesus. The Pharisees thought they knew better than Jesus. They were wrong. And so are we when we don't take our neighbors like we find them and love them like God asks us to. Our job is to love people so freely that they wonder why. And when they ask, we get to say, because God first loved me, without reservation, without qualification, and despite a lifetime of proof that I don't deserve it. Jesus knew what was in their hearts and why they had asked him the question about the greatest commandment. They wanted to catch him out. They thought they were smarter than Jesus and wanted to justify their position by making him look stupid. But when we read on, starting in Matthew 22:41, it's like the bar scene in Good Will Hunting, or the dart scene in Ted Lasso. Jesus lays the smack down hard. I'll let you read it for yourself sometime, but my unauthorized translation of the text is, if you think you are smarter than me, think again. I told you the 2 things you need to do, and you need to get better at both of them. So stay in your ever-loving lane. So what does this have to do with the oldest profession in the world? Every coach ever at some point realizes that they are coaching who they are coaching. Coaches dream of a roster full of accomplished and seasoned players whose skills, understanding, and experience allow them to execute a game plan with just a few tweaks and adjustments here and there. Then they wake up and realize that one of their point guards doesn't have a left hand, and that their other one doesn't have a right hand. They realize that their big man is 6 feet tall with his shoes and 3 pair of socks on. They realize that the best skill set their forwards have is being forward with the ladies. And they realize that their shooting guards couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. This is when they learn that you take them where they are. The good news is that most players want to get better. So the job of a coach is to take them where they are and help them get to where they want to go. Footwork drills, form shooting, ball handling and passing drills, rebounding skills, court awareness, offensive and defensive alignments and strategies. These are all part of the process of making players and teams better. But it turns out there's a complicating factor: human nature. It may surprise you to learn that not all players hang on every word that comes out of the coach's mouth. Some players think they know better than the coaches. Some players don't want to improve their footwork or learn how to play defense or rebuild their shot into something resembling good form. Then coaches have a choice to make. They can write them off, or they can work with who they've got. I've dealt with it countless of times on the court, on the field, and on the golf course. And in that process, I have discovered that how I choose to coach them makes all the difference in developing a relationship with them. If I want to have any kind of influence on their game or otherwise, I have to take them where they are. If I can convince them that I care about them, and it has to be genuine because they have great BS detectors, then I can get them to try almost anything. My influence is limited by our relationship, and without a relationship, I have no business trying to fix their game. Indeed, it's pointless to try because they won't listen anyway. I see this approach in the life and ministry of Jesus. Jesus choosing to take people where they are, ministering to their needs as they understand them, and developing a relationship based on respect that leads to understanding, that leads to love. Jesus knows we are flawed, broken, and hurting. But instead of wishing for better players, he takes us where we are and helps us get where we want to go. And the great thing about Jesus' style of coaching is that as his players understand that their coach is more interested in them than their jump shot, they end up desperately wanting to improve their jump shot, all without forcing them to do it. The point is that the likelihood of having a Michael Jordan in all his goatness walk through your door is pretty low. Don't start. He's the GOAT. No debate. End of story. The best coach ever loves us despite the fact that we're not perfect, so we shouldn't expect perfection from each other. Our job is to stay in our lane and coach our players. Let me rephrase that. Our job is to stay in our lane and love our neighbors. A number of years ago, I noticed a high school player putting up shots in our gym in the afternoons. It was pretty obvious that his footwork was, to quote Scott Ligman, less than optimal. After a week or so of witnessing such diligent practice of poor footwork, I couldn't help myself. I showed him the correct footwork. I talked about why it was better, and I coached him through a few reps until he could do it right. 20 minutes later, I walked by the doorway and he was practicing his old footwork. I realized that he didn't care what I had to say because I was nobody to him. What I told him was true, but it didn't matter because I wasn't his coach. What I told him was true, but it didn't matter because I wasn't his coach. I've coached a lot of players that would do anything I asked of them. Remember Calvin running through the brick wall? But I've had others that blew me off like that high school kid, even when I tried to develop a relationship with them. It brings up an interesting question. Why don't players or people want to change? Well, change is difficult. Change is scary. Change is painful. And difficult plus scary plus painful often adds up to fear. And unfortunately, it can be a short trip from fear to hate, because hate makes a certain logical sense to fearful minds. This short trip is evidenced by the general culture of hate and outrage that we are currently experiencing. Maybe outrage is cherished because it's easier than dealing with the difficult and the painful. James Baldwin once said, "I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hates so stubbornly is because they sense once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with pain." A long-term culture of outrage leads to acceptance of a false narrative that starts with "they are right and we are right and they are wrong," and quickly gets to "we are good and they are bad and the source of all our problems." This is not a recent phenomenon. It's been repeated with disastrous results down through history. In 1959, Howard Thurman wrote about the effects of hate in his book, Jesus and the Disinherited. Thurman talks about how both the powerful and the powerless find hatred useful. The logical chain from pain to fear to hate allows behavior that under normal circumstances would be cause for self-condemnation. Thurman says, "Thus, hatred becomes a device by which an individual seeks to protect himself against moral disintegration. He does to other human beings what he could not ordinarily do to them without losing self-respect. This is an aspect of hatred that has almost universal application during a time of war and national crisis." Does this sound familiar? It does to me, and it makes even more meaningful the words in 1 John 4:18. "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear." Which brings us back to loving people the way we find them. We don't have to fully understand them. We don't have to agree with them, or particularly even like them. But Jesus makes it clear that our job is to love them. I saw a pickup tailgate a few years back that was covered with Marine Corps stickers. One of them said, "Shoot them all and let God sort them out." It occurs to me that Jesus would love that bumper sticker, with one small adjustment. Substitute love for shoot, and it's exactly what God asks of us. Being a coach means there is a relationship of responsibility, care, and accountability that lets you ask them to do difficult and painful things. It also means they get to ask you difficult questions that you might not want to hear. Learning goes both ways, and it can be difficult and painful for everyone involved. The relationship is what makes it possible, bearable, and worthwhile. The coaching metaphor isn't perfect, because although coaches usually know the specific changes that are needed in their players, we frequently don't know that about each other. The story about the speck of dust in the plank comes to mind. Remember that great defensive player I told you about? I was right to think that I should put my best defensive player on the ball, but it turns out there was another way too. Maybe there are times and circumstances when there is more than one way to accomplish the same thing. He taught me that I can learn from listening to other perspectives than my own, even if I don't understand or agree with them. So, what does coaching teach us about the essence of being human? I hope by now it's clear that coaching isn't just about sports. I also hope I have made the connection between the three themes and the overarching theme found in the Bible. The centrality of being human is our physical existence. Empathy is the necessary skill for human thriving, and our job is to love people the way we find them. It is my belief that these three themes all point to one thing: what God expects from us. I see these three themes in God's plan to send Jesus to this flawed and broken world. Jesus came to us in human form. He demonstrated empathy to those around him by walking their path, getting to know them, and showing them a better way. Jesus loved his team where they were. Instead of wishing for better disciples, he showed them compassion, understanding, and love. He knows we are flawed and broken enough that we can only handle two things. So he kept it simple. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. It's simple and very, very powerful. It's the oldest profession in the world, and God is inviting us to join his coaching staff. Thank you.
Well, you don't get to escape quite that easily going back to sit down. It's time now for questions and answers. You've given a great applause there, but I do want to also thank on behalf of the Faculty Development Committee for accepting this invitation and just such a beautiful presentation, weaving so many elements together that are not necessarily thought of all the time. So it is now time for you to ask the questions that you might have been thinking about during the presentation, which is where you don't get to escape. So I'll give you a moment. There are mics to go around. If you have one right at the beginning, we're ready for you. I'll give you a moment.
I probably should have cashed the check before this talk.
Well, I'm part of a department that might refer to yours as a 2-letter, maybe 4-letter if we're generous, department.
Depends on the 4 letters, but I'll take 4.
Well, it adds on to the 2. It'll be the activity part, I think. Rod, I helped out a student this afternoon trying to do a presentation for engineering, and I noted that it was trying to work on mental skills as well as some thought process. Can you give me an example of, in coaching, where you would coach both gross motor skill, fine motor skill, and mental skill at the same time?
Yeah, in 2 weeks, come to my principles of coaching class. We talk about developing a practice. And one of the things we think about is there are physical skills and mental skills that are involved in any sport. And so when you set up a practice, you have to pay attention to how you are addressing those things. The most difficult thing to do is the difficult mental engagement that is required for learning. And the idea is you set up a practice situation where it's outside of their comfort zone, but not so difficult that they fail absolutely. So constant challenge, and that is mentally very difficult. So one of the things I do is I look for ways in a practice to set up things that are just plain old physical, just don't take a ton of mental engagement. And then I alternate that with periods where it's very focused mentally. It might be physical as well, but I can't have them practice for more than 5 minutes at something that is really, really difficult mentally to engage in, because it's not possible. You have to give them little breaks. And so I approach it that way, and my practices then look like physical, mental, physical, mental, physical, mental, and sometimes a combination. And I also find that it's best to not spend too much time on one thing. The research shows us that if you're introducing a new skill or idea, give them 5 minutes, then go do something else. Then come back and do 5 minutes, and then do something else, and then 5 more minutes. 15 minutes of practice at one time is not nearly as effective as 3 periods of 5 minutes spread throughout the practice. Also sleep cycles. Sleep cycles are critical for learning. So was that anywhere close? Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. A quick question here. What is the most, in your view, what's the most common mistake that a coach makes as they try to help someone?
I think it's very common, and it was one of my first mistakes. My first season coaching basketball, which was my thing, we went 1-11. Halfway through the season, I was so depressed, riding home on the bus. It was awful. My whole world was collapsing. And one of my early mentors, Wayne Tamanaha at Orangewood Academy, he came over and sat by me and said, "What's the problem?" And I said, I'm a failure. We can't win. And he just looked at me and he said, "Are your players getting better?" Because they had graduated like 6 seniors, so I had a really young team. And he said, "Are they learning?" "Yep." "You think they're getting better?" "Oh, every day." He goes, "Well, then what's the problem?" He said, "This isn't about you. This is about them." And I think one of the mistakes coaches make is they take the performance personally. When you throw a pass out of bounds or dribble it off your foot, I am somehow personally offended by this. You didn't try to do that. It was a mistake. So I need to get over myself a little bit and say, what is my purpose here? My first day coaching in the golf team, first 2 things out of my mouth. There's a goal and a purpose on this golf team. The goal is to, every time we play, to shoot the lowest round of golf possible. Your best round ever. That's your goal every time you play. The purpose is to use golf to make you better people. Because those same things that will help you shoot a low score, hard work, dedication, perseverance, overcoming adversity, working with idiots, all those kinds of things, they're going to make you better people too. So don't ever confuse the two. Always try to play your best, but why are we here? And coaches often forget why they're there because it's about them.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for your presentation. Could you maybe help me understand, in your opinion, the difference between a coach, a mentor, and an advisor?
Who gave him the mic? I think all 3 of those kinds of people serve similar types of functions. I will tell you, in my time coaching, the last time I coached as it was a head coach on this campus, I spent more time with those kids than any of their major professors. If I have a kid play for me for 4 years, I have spent exponentially more time with them than any of their major professors or their advisors or their mentors. So a coach has a very distinct relationship most times because of the time spent. And that time spent, it's the problem with athletics in the world today, because coaches are the critical factor in the success of an athletic program. And if you don't have coaches, in our case, that fully buy into what we're trying to do on this campus in every way, that's trouble. That's real trouble. And so the reason I quit coaching basketball here was because I knew what was expected of me, and I knew what I needed to do to make my team better. And it took more time than I had available to give because I had to have a full-time job in addition to coaching. So I would say that's the biggest difference, is the time spent and the influence that is possible. I know there's students in here that have had mentors in our mentor system, and from what I hear, that's a fantastic program. My wife has been part of it. It's a fantastic program, but the amount of time and the amount of influence you have on them is minuscule compared to the amount of time that our volleyball team has spent with their coach. So that would be my biggest difference. Similar roles, similar functions, but like on major steroids.
Thanks for the presentation. So in thinking about your 3 themes, as I'm thinking about it, number 1, requires an acknowledgement of a fact. Number 3 is easier if you accomplish number 2. What's the gateway to number 2? Practical tips, suggestions. As I think about it, if I think of some people, it's very easy for me. If I think of other people, it's not. So from your experience in coaching, what are some of the tips or tricks that you can add to our toolbox with people where we might struggle with empathy?
That's a really good question. You're not going to believe this, but I actually anticipated something along this line, and if they'll put up the last slide, this is from American Psychological Association, and you can go to there and see a really good article. These are things that you can do. These are things that you can do to practice empathy. But if you look at the second one, well, you really look at all of them. I mean, yeah, the first one, okay, whatever. Be willing to grow. There's got to be a willingness to say, I'm here and I need to be here, just like your players. Expose yourself to differences. There are going to be differences that you don't like. All kinds of differences that you don't like, that you don't understand, that you don't agree with. And if you're not willing to expose yourself to them with an open mind, that's going to interfere with your ability to interact in ways that you otherwise could. We don't change people's hearts. The Holy Spirit does. Our job is to get them to wonder why. How can you love me so much, even though we're different in this way or that way, or our lifestyles are different, or our understandings, or our religions, or whatever? If you can get them to ask that question, that's the $64,000 question. So this is a place to start. The next place to start is face-to-face. Be with people. Put your phones down, put your computers away. I mean, be with people. You might suck at it first, but you'll get better.
Yeah, exceptional lecture, Professor Strobel. Thank you so much. A question about coaching, maybe as we think about it in the popular sense. Coaches, in America and around the world are being paid exorbitant amounts of money. Often they're the highest paid state employees, particularly football programs. So I guess a two-part question. One, I'm curious about your assessment just of coaching being such a big deal in so many ways in our culture. And second, is there anybody sort of in that realm of the famous coach that you look to and say they're doing it right?
Both of you are on my list for giving them their mics there and there. The easy answer is Coach K. I mean, advisedly, he's human. I'm sure he's made all kinds of mistakes. And he had it pretty easy once he started winning. It's easy for him to recruit people. But, Coach K talked about building men, right? John Wooden is another really good example. Sometime you should read a letter that he sent to his players. I think it was a 1972 season, and it talked about how he was going to coach them. And that was in a time that was very different than we are now, but his approach still holds a lot of water. I would say that the state of coaching in our world right now is entirely dependent upon the level that you're looking at. Because when you get up to NCAA Division II and above, it's primarily a business. It's a business based on an activity, but it's primarily a business. And so those coaches, if they want a job, they have to function in a certain way. And it tends towards them taking shortcuts. And that's a problem. And I'm not sure if there's a real fix for it. I think the fix for it is to, at the earliest levels of participation and coaching, make sure that the coaching is done right. I've seen it over and over again where you have people, and it's hard because what do parents want? They want an athletic program, even at the 4th and 5th grade level. And so who are you going to get to coach? Well, how much does it pay? Nothing. So who are you going to find? You're going to find a parent that happens to have a kid in the program and that has played basketball. They may or may not have any idea what a good coach should be doing or how they should be doing it. And that's where the problem starts. Because if they get results, guess who doesn't care if they're yelling at the kids? Most of the parents. Now, some of them do, but if they're winning, they're going to go with those kids and they're going to keep going with them and on up and up and up, and pretty soon they're going to be making lots of money. And never have engaged with what it really means to be a coach, meaning you have to care deeply about your players, their well-being. If you don't do that, you're going to do way more harm than good. A number of you were probably here years ago when Dr. Sharon Stoll came and gave a distinguished scholar lecture. Her career has spent decades researching moral reasoning in athletes, and she finds across the board that the longer someone is involved in competitive athletics, the worse they score on tests of moral reasoning and decision making. Except if there is an intentional program to develop character that is as an important part of the practice and athletic situation as other parts. In those cases, it can go the other way, but athletics is never neutral, ever. It's either helping or hurting. So even at the 4th and 5th grade level, we better make sure our coaches know what they're doing. They don't need to know the X's and O's at the 4th and 5th grade level, trust me. They just need to know how to coach and how to care. That's what they have to do. I know that was partly an evasion, but.
So you might have half answered this already, but what do you do when you have a player or a community that is all about the goal and could care less about the purpose?
Oh, Jerry. Sometimes you have to walk away. Other times you try to work from within the system, even if it's to damage a broken system. And so you keep talking about the right things. You have pre-season meetings that all the parents and the players are at and say, here's how I'm going to approach this season. And it's going to be different. 4th and 5th grade, high school, collegiate. Collegiate, you don't get to meet with the parents, but you keep talking about it. You keep talking about it until you can convince others that it's the right way to do it. And the way you do that is by doing it well enough, caring and loving well enough, that they see the difference it's making in their kids. Because when you start making a difference in the life of their kids, the kids come home and tell mom and dad, oh man, this is so great. And physical education teachers and coaches have a unique place in the lives of students because of the nature of the activity. And so they attract people to them. And so you have an opportunity to make this huge influence on their life. And when they get that influence, they're going to start talking about it as well. They're going to run through the brick walls for their coaches, and the parents are going to go, I wonder why that is. So you just keep talking about it, and you don't stop talking about it.
Thank you for a great presentation. Our audience includes some athletes, but is full of your fellow colleagues here at the university and community members. And I wonder if you could step away from sport for a moment and be the ultimate coach. You've shared 3 powerful points with us, but if you could give us some tangibles, here's your homework because I'm coaching you tonight as community members, as church members, as fellow colleagues. What would you wish for us to do now?
If we assume the first theme, and I know there's danger in that, but I've still got $20 if anybody wants it. Practicing empathy and finding ways to love people. That has nothing to do with sport. It helps with sport, just like it helps with everything else. I don't think Jesus coached a team, but he made a difference in the lives of the people around him. He drew people to him because he was empathetic and he loved them where they were. And so the specifics, what's your job, right? I mean, I'm not coaching an athletic team right now, but I'm coaching a bunch of people down at the health and physical education department. And I know that when I am more empathetic, the whole thing works better. I don't always agree with every one of them, but I care about them and I love them. And when I practice empathy, it works. I mean, I feel sorry for people in the rest of this campus because we have by far the best department on the campus. See? And part of that has to do with our great kids, too. But man, it works. And so it doesn't matter if you are on the basketball court or in the boardroom or at the front counter of Chipotle. Those things work. They work. So, yeah, I guess my answer is, pick your business. I mean, I hear that about other teachers on this campus all the time. I mean, I just sat with a person the other day saying, yeah, I need to take a religion class. What's Paul Dibdahl teaching? They never had a class from him, but they know. They know.
I see one mic queued up over here and one mic over there. All right, so I think after that, I'm going to make room for one last question because I want to make sure those that are already lined up are there. But if you have a burning question, I want you to be ready after our second one. Go ahead, please.
What age group do you most enjoy teaching, and has that changed in the course of your career?
It has. I have never liked 7th and 8th grade. My first job was 7 through 12 boys physical education. They're not ankle biters anymore, but they're really close and they're so annoying. So 7th and 8th, I've never enjoyed them. They're good kids. I still talk with some of my 7th graders from Orangewood. Probably the collegiate level. And maybe primarily the reason is because I feel like there are more light bulb moments. Light bulb moments that are bright light bulb moments. Because we get to talk about ideas at this level that we don't really get to talk about at the high school level. Now, those kids were great. I mean, I could tell you stories about kids that are just amazing, and it was so much fun. But I think the collegiate level because of the big bright light bulbs that you can see.
Hi, Rod. Thank you very much. I should say one quick thing. Rod allowed me to continue having a relationship with my sons, who were very sportsy in high school, but I had been raised in an era of everyone got to play. No one was very good. Any of you close to my age know what Adventist athletics were like, and I was at Loma Linda Academy. We had a program, but it was still sports at a very different level than what's available now. So I guess, Rod, thank you. First of all, I mean, he explained why junior varsity and varsity would actually be good for my children because I didn't understand that. And they both are grateful to you as well. But what's your take on Adventist education and sports? And that's a huge question, I know, but where are we and where are we going from your perspective?
You're lucky you're my friend, Julie. I've learned a lot from Julie over the years. This is a really hard question because I think I'm not going to name any programs anywhere or at any time, but I think many programs don't get it right because of the lack of understanding that the most important part of the program is having coaches that do those three things, that get those 3 points across. And there's nothing magic about my 3 points, but the ideas behind them are absolutely critical. And if you're not addressing character in any athletic program, no matter what level, you're not doing it right and you shouldn't be doing it. It's going to cause more harm than good. And so people have asked me that over the years at different places and in different contexts. Do you think that this place should have an athletic program? And from what I understand about the program, and some of them I've known fairly well, there's a lot of time my answer is no. No, there shouldn't be one, because it's not this. And if it's not this, it's this. And that's a problem. So I think that it's varied. The state of the field right now is just all over the place. And you see a lot of examples of really, you know, the 12th assistant at Michigan, right? You heard that story. He was a systematic, you know, thing of stealing signs from the other team, and there are problems. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be, but there are. I don't know if that is even close to an answer.
Last question. All right, thank you.
Rod, I'll make it easy on you. It's not a question, it's just a statement. So our friend Kevin wishes he could be here tonight, and he wanted me to tell you that he's incredibly proud to be your friend, and he would be here if he weren't coaching himself in Arizona right now. But one of the things that Kevin has said is that you are the greatest coach that he's ever seen. And Kevin has spent a lifetime of learning from coaches. So kudos to you, and thanks for a fantastic presentation. I wish, to answer Julie's question, that Adventist education would fully understand this and embrace it in a way that would blow the doors off of athletics. So thank you for tonight.
Thank you.
You bow your heads with me. Lord, thank you for your servant, Rod. Thank you for blessing us with him and all those that he has worked with through his career. Thank you for the points that he used the profession of coaching to drive home to us, to each think about how we can apply this in our lives. Help us as we seek to be willing to grow, and please send your Holy Spirit to bless us with the empathy to show love to all those around us in the way that you have created us to. Help us to remember the balance and the wholeness of a lifestyle that is both active and engaged, and the role that our bodies play in this. Help us to care for these temples you've given us, these vessels that allow us to experience you. Thank you for caring so much about us, from the design to the future. In your name, amen.